So I just finished up with the math behind surviving super cold water, and like the Edmonds Fitzgerald guys didn't have access to the dry suits back then, and what you'd do if you fell through in a lake. But now we're getting into serious factoring. We factored out the 2. It's called the GCF. Tully, what do you get after you factor out the 2?
X squared plus 6x plus 2.
Excellent. Now my gut says that I can't factor out anything else, and I don't think I can factor it this way. Here's why. Because if that's an x and that's an x, it has to be a plus and a plus because these are both pluses. And it has to be a 2 and a 1 because they have to multiply to 2. But this and this does not make 6, does it? Do you get if I switch the signs, it wouldn't help? Do you get if I switch the numbers around, it wouldn't help? Those are the only 2 things you can do. Switch the signs, and if they're the same, it's irrelevant. Or switch the numbers. And if I switch the numbers around, it's still not going to make 6. So that one doesn't factor on your next test. If you leave it that way, you will lose. You know why? Because you have to know how to use the what? Yes, greatest common factor. Yes, we need that. Nothing wrong with that. But there's a formula. X equals negative b. Remember this from the first 20? Remember me saying it was come up? If you can't factor this thing, you can still solve it with the quadratic formula. Everybody stick in A, B, and C. Carter, can you tell me what A is? Do you know? Yes.
Oh, sorry.
What's A? Yes, very good. There's a 1 right there. Anna, what's B? And George, what's C?
2.
Good. So everybody go stick 6 in for the B's. I'm putting it in parentheses. It sometimes matters. And then the A was 1, and that's 2 spots. And then the C only is in one place, and that's there. Negative 6. That's a weird looking 6. I'm going to try again. Negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 8 all over 2. And then I can actually do 36 minus 8. I think it's 28. Does that sound right? Verify 28?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So then I'm thinking to myself, does 4 go into that? And it does. 4. 7 times 4 is 28, see? So that's really 2 square root of 7. That, plus or minus that, all over 2. I better rewrite it. It's getting messy. You'd have to know how to do this? Yeah, you would. Just a big formula. It's not that bad. Tully, look at the top of this thing and tell me what is in both of them. What's the GCF of that?
2.
Yes, so we all factor out a 2 right there. And then the 2 on the bottom will cancel with it. Brady, when I divide everything by 2, negative 3. Keep going. Plus or minus the square root of 7. Good. These cancel. There's my answer. Those are weird looking. Are they imaginary? No. If their square root was negative, they'd be imaginary. These are real. These are real places. They're just a decimal. You know, square root of 7 is a decimal. All right. So that was a really hard one. Here's one that's not nearly as hard. Remember to look for the GCF. They both have something in them. Factor it out. Okay, did you notice that 4 went into both of them and you could factor it like this? Trent, divide them both by 4 and tell me what goes in here.
X squared
Minus 4. Good. Now, did any of you notice that you could factor this part again? do it if you haven't already. That's called the difference of squares. That's got that little pattern. X minus 2, x plus 2. There's your final answer. I bet a lot of you factored it once, but you didn't factor it all the way. If you had the blue answer, you lose on the test. I'm going to try to remind you, hey guys, look and see if it factors all the way. But a lot of people will forget and they won't get to this final answer. Now, why do we factor again? Because I know x equals 2 and x equals negative 2 are the zeros. They make the equation equal 0. And so they are the x-intercepts, they're the zeros, they're the roots, and they're the solutions. That's why factoring is such a big deal. All right, so here's another kind of factoring. This was factored out, and you want to check to see if you're right. Would you please multiply it out and see what it comes to? That's how you check factoring. Is you take the factors, you multiply them back out, and you make sure they work. Unlike almost all of our math tests, you can know if you've got it or not. If you think this is factored, well then multiply it out and see if that's what the problem was. All right, what did you get, Arrow? 2x squared minus 11x plus 12. Can anybody verify that? A lot of people nodding. Good. Okay, cool. Do you get if this was your original problem? Then, yay, you factored it right. That's what you do. That's how you check it. All right. So, another thing that comes up a lot, people ask me this. Mr. Server, I see you sometimes use that number on the outside and sometimes you don't. So is there only two answers, or is this also an answer? I know some of you don't know. The answers are x equals 3 and x equals 4, and that 2 does not make the equation 0, does it? Does that 2 make the equation 0? No, so that is not an answer. It's not a 0. It's not a solution. Now, if there was an x out there, then could that make the equation equal 0? Yes, so then you'd have to say, oh, and x equals 0 is also an answer. See, this one has 3 answers. And if you multiply it all the way out, you'd have an x to the 3rd in it. And that's how you can tell how many answers a problem has. If it says to the 3rd, there's 3 roots. There's 3 answers. If it says x squared, you know, like this one, that means there's 2 answers. Okay, here's one more hard one. 3x squared plus 3x minus 36. I know some of you were like not awesome at the basic, like, oh, I don't know how to divide 36 up, but do you get if 3 goes into the first 2, 3 probably goes into the last one? 3 probably goes into 36? Does anybody know what? 3 times what makes 36? 3 times 12 makes 36. That'll help you if you're struggling with dividing 36 up. So 3 times 12 is 36. There's a little fact down to the side there. Okay, the 3 comes out. X squared plus x minus 12. Mr. T. Ethan, tell me what you always do after you put in the x's. What's the next thing you should decide? Exactly, the pluses and minuses. So should this be two pluses? Should it be two minuses, or should it be a plus and a minus?
Minus and plus.
Yes. And the order of those does not make difference, just has to be one negative and one positive. Okay, good. And now, you were taught that it just has to multiply to this and add to that, and it does not do that. It will multiply to 12, though. So, I'm thinking it's probably 4 and a 3. So I'm going to check and see if this works. That definitely makes negative 12 at the end, but it makes 3x and minus 4x for the inside ones, and that makes negative x. Crap, it's not what I wanted, but it's the opposite of what I wanted. So how many of you knew I should switch the signs? Raise your hand if you were like, I know what to do. Yep. When it's the opposite of what you wanted, you switch the signs. That becomes plus, that becomes minus, that becomes plus, that becomes minus, and now it works. It gives us what we want. Okay, now, if you really want to be paranoid, you would go and multiply this thing out, and you would get x squared plus 4x minus 3x minus 12, and then you have to do the 3 times everything to make sure it really, really worked. If your grade depends on it, I would do this on the test. I am not going to check that you did it. You do not have to do it. But like, if you want to be sure that you did it right, this is how you can tell. 3x squared plus 3x minus 36. And is that what I wanted? Yes, it is. Same exact thing I had here. Okay, there's the big overview of complicated factoring. From here, you have another worksheet, tons of time, and I'm not cutting any problems out because you have tons of time. Did I mention that? This will be easy for you if you know factoring. If you get stuck, please come up and ask. Oh, one more thing I forgot to go over the other day. What if there's a negative in front? You have to factor that out. Don't ever try to factor this. You factor the negative 1 out first. Was I too late? Had I already lost your attention? If you ever have a negative in front, you need to factor it out as a negative 1. Then the thing can be factored again, but not until you get that factored out first. Okay? All right, so if there's ever a negative here, it's like there's a number there, and it's like a GCF kind of, and you want to factor it out. Okay, that's all I got for you for today.